class is underway in al-Mawasi refugee camp on southern Gaza's coastline. These young minds have witnessed untold horrors. But for a couple of hours a day, their attention is focused on their teacher and their classmates.
I came here to study and to learn. Coming here will help me achieve my dreams.
I'm here to learn and be more active. I like going to school very much.
There's no shortage of eager students, and the simplest thing, like learning how to draw, can transport a child's imagination far beyond the walls of a tent.
Yesterday, the teacher taught me maths and Arabic. I also learned how to draw a fruit basket because I like fruit so much. I haven't had any fruit for 3 weeks.
Aya Radwan is a teacher at Hope Makers School, where pen and paper are scarce, but enthusiasm and dedication are in abundance.
Our conditions here are very difficult. There is no blackboard. We try to help children in the simplest ways. We will not let them down.
Al-Mawasi is a narrow strip of land, just 1 kilometer wide and 14 kilometers long. There's no running water, electricity or sanitation. Not ideal conditions in which to live or learn. But teachers like these are determined to make a difference.
We focus on 3 study areas: psychological care, values and principles, and education and skills. Despite all the difficulties and the lack of almost everything, we have managed to teach 480 children in 4 tents.
The familiar buzz of Israeli drones in the sky above is drowned out ever so slightly by a physical education class. For a moment, it's children being children again, and the devastation and grief of the war seems far away. Michael Appel, Al Jazeera.
Joining us now is Ricardo Pires. He's a spokesman for the UN's children's agency, UNICEF, and joins us live now from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Good to have you with us, Mr. Pires, on the programme. Just to clarify, are there any working schools in Gaza at all?
Thanks for having me. No, not at all. Since 7 months now, nearly 8, children have had no continuous access to education or schools. Schools have become shelters, in fact, and sometimes have been under attack. So no, there is no education system right now functioning in Gaza, and we're doing our best, as it was shown in the segment, which is very hopeful to see, to keep children safe and continuously learning a little bit, bit by bit, but there is no safety for them to do that, and no infrastructure and no right conditions.
Sure. I mean, how is the ability then to teach youngsters? It obviously has become more and more difficult since October the 7th, because you've got a lack of facilities on one side, a shifting of the educational parameters, you might say, because of safe zones or evacuation zones, however the Israelis want to describe them. And then I presume a lack of teachers, because as time has gone on, there have been some, I'm sure, that have been killed, injured, or escaped.
Yeah, absolutely. Before October 7th, we had 22,000 teachers in average working in the Gaza Strip to help those 625,000 students to learn and thrive, hopefully looking at their futures. But right now, lacking infrastructure and indeed the safety to do so became a huge impediment for us. We were trying to get 50 tents through into Rafah before the incursion to start a very sort of formal basic education space for children, in average 150 per turn. But then we had to halt those plans because the military offensive started, and again, hundreds of thousands of people had to evacuate again to al-Mawasi, an area where it's basically sand dunes and very hard to set up such an infrastructure. So education is again at halt, which jeopardizes their present and their future.
And I suppose the infrastructure for education comes down the priority list, doesn't it, when food, water and medicine are high up on the agenda for aid agencies like the UN to try and get food, to get those sort of supplies into the region. So one wonders how teaching itself has had to change to make sure that children of all ages get some sort of, I suppose, sense of normality and that they get the education they need for their age bracket. I mean, there are so many moving parts and so many things to consider when a child comes in front of you and one is 15 and the other one is 3.
Absolutely, and it's a sad reality, one that we're trying to manage day after day. But right now, we're worried about their safety first and foremost, and as you mentioned, to make sure that they have enough food, water, medicines, and healthcare, and psychosocial support as well, because we can say safely that every single child in the Gaza Strip today is traumatized after 7, nearly 8 months of horror. So we're trying again to create these safe spaces to give them the psychosocial support that they so desperately need. But it's very difficult under the circumstances now when multiple displacements keep happening, and safety again is a big issue. So this is not only a war on children, on their present, but on their future. No schools are functioning. All universities have been destroyed. So what are they going to look forward to? And we're trying to make sure that at least that very basic formal education of numeracy and literacy can continue and that they feel safe to be children again.
You very conveniently came to my next question, which is about the trauma, because you can't ignore the environment these children are in. So one presumes that those teachers that are still surviving, so to speak, have become social workers too. They need that support as well, don't they, from agencies like yourself, because they're not just teachers anymore now. They've most probably become the nearest thing to a parent for some of those children who we do know have become orphans as well.
Absolutely. They've become survivors like every other child in the Gaza Strip who are struggling to live day after day and not knowing what tomorrow will look like. They thought in Rafah they would have the allegedly safe space to wait until there's a ceasefire and this horror ends. But again, they were forced out into al-Mawasi, Deir al-Balah, and the rubbles and the remains of Khan Yunis. And every single teacher is now indeed a social worker, a parent to children who've been separated from their parents or who've lost their parents, and we know many thousands have. So it's a completely different scenario for them. Education now has become an activity that goes way beyond books and maths and numbers and history, but moreover, its psychosocial support is making sure that children feel safe and that they can still hope and dream of a future, which right now seems very, very far away.
Well, I hope we'll be able to invite you back to talk about how things have improved as and when they do in the not too distant future. Ricardo Pires there from the UN's children's agency, UNICEF. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.